Hello, everyone. My name is Marilyn Shannon, and this is the Breaking Free Show. And I am so happy to be here with you today. I'm so glad that you have found some time in your life to join us each and every week. It's really an honor and a pleasure. And so, thank you very much for being here. I hope it's lovely where you are. It's coming, we're in Easter vacation in a lot of places, and I hope that uh, you've had some wonderful opportunities to be with people that you care and that you love about. A love, period. So let me say hi to Amnon.
Hello, Marilyn. Good morning. Good afternoon.
That is afternoon, at
Yeah.
least where we are.
Yes, that's right. It is afternoon. It's getting to be a nice day
It
outside.
is getting to be, yeah,
Finally.
finally. Yesterday was so
I
gloomy.
know.
Oh my gosh, it was so gloomy. It's probably the kind of day you could see the
But
little eggs
there's
outside.
there's one silver lining to the gloomy
What
and
is
the
that?
rain.
What is that?
Pollen has been
Pollen.
washed
Oh, we've had a
away,
lot of pollen.
and it's washing
It's going to come
the
back,
rain.
right?
Well, I don't know. I hope
Oh
not.
my gosh. I walked out one day last week and I'm like, this is like very green. Oh,
Yeah.
pollen. I had to really like
Yeah.
think about it. So anyway, so you know, if you've been here before, what the drill is. But let me go over it just in case you forgot and you're new and you haven't been here before, because we'd love to have new, old, whoever you are. We're happy you're here. So this is a show always that you are more than welcome to call in and share your thoughts, your ideas, your life. And you can do that. You can, first of all, you can partake in our chat. We have a live chat that goes on during the show. Put your name, nickname right below the video to the right, and you'll see a big window will open up, and you can partake in our chat anytime. You can call into the studio at 919-518-9773. You can also connect with us into our studio by coming in on Skype at computers 2, that's in number 2, K Voice. And if you are on Blab, you can do that as well. And we'd love to have you, right?
Hmm.
They come in on how on Blab?
All these ways.
All these ways. And if you can think of another way, let us know. So, anyway, if you've been here before, we love inviting our very guests back. And my guest today has been here before, and we love him. Dan Galloway is a very special friend of our show. And today he's here, and we're going to be talking about uh, career searching, looking for jobs, transitions, and we're going to have a great focus on ADHD, which is so common. And we're going to be shedding some light on it and sharing some insider tips. So let's welcome Dan to our show. Hey, Dan.
Hey, Marilyn, thanks for having me. This is very exciting.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Great to be here.
And so, how you been doing?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's been going on in your life?
Well, first off, people call me the Energizer Bunny, and
Yeah.
I always say that I'm tough. So that's kind of how it is. I'm like everyone else, facing all kinds of challenges in life, and life itself throws so many things at you. But in a nutshell, yeah, I'm the Energizer Bunny. I'm tough, and I just keep going. So
And so,
there's my answer to your question.
what makes you the Energizer Bunny?
I'd like to think it's what I'll call the superpower of ADHD, actually. I mean, realistically, that's how I look at it.
Mm.
Definitely.
So a tremendous gift.
I do. I mean, there have been, obviously, and anyone who has ADHD or knows someone who does, they know that there are a ton, and tons an awful lot. If you really think about how much that weighs, that's 2,000 pounds, I think. There's a ton of challenges with ADHD. But there's also a lot of good things that, unfortunately, I don't think we hear about in mainstream news. For the most part, it's about drug companies and the myth that they're just trying to make money all the time and not really trying to help people. And all the controversy about Ritalin, and there's more to it than that. And that's what I'm trying to get out there with my message. Is there's lots of good things that come with ADHD as well.
Good. Well, I'm glad you came here to share it with us. So let's start talking about all the good things. So one of the areas we're focusing on is job search, career changes, transitions. So start sharing with us some of those tips that you have. You have personal experience, and I think that's what makes so many people so great is that we are speaking from personal experience and
Oh yeah,
taking our knowledge on the road, and that's very important. So
right.
share with us, start the ball rolling for us.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to do is give you a very fast, and I have learned how to edit my stories, give you a very fast rundown for people who are like, well, what's his background exactly? And how are we you have ADHD and career choices, and how does all this connect? To make a very long story short, I've worked as a recruiter down at SeaWorld in Orlando. This was 103 years ago, but I was a recruiter, so I've been on the side of the interviewer. And it was actually frustrating because people would come in and screw up interviews, and I couldn't help them. I mean, my job was just to go ahead and tell them, well, good luck to you. You know, I couldn't help them. So there was an opening that came up at the University of Central Florida. This is still when we lived in Orlando. We live in Raleigh now, Raleigh, North Carolina. But there was an opening for a career coach, and I read about this, and I thought, oh, this would be so much fun. This would be so exciting because I could help students with that, you know, getting that first job out of school. So I went into that role. So I've got the recruiting experience, I've got the career coaching experience, which I still do now on my own. But one thing I'll say about that job when I was working at the university was I would go out to groups and I would do lots of talks. And that's when I realized how much I really enjoyed being a speaker, which I had not gone to school. I went to school to be a DJ. I mean, really. And then so getting the recruiting job was actually kind of a miracle, first job out of school. Anyway, so I did career coaching at the university. Since 96, I work very part-time. It's become a little bit more part-time than it has been more. It was more on the full-time reign for a while, but now it's more part-time with a career consulting firm that helps people who have lost their jobs. We're not a headhunter, but we help people through training and coaching, you know, how to go out and get another position. So my whole background has been in this field, whether it's being on the side of the interviewer or being a career coach, but also, and most importantly, as an applicant and being self-employed that I am, I'm really always an applicant. So that's how I get to this point where I'm talking about career transition, because I have so much experience from different angles. Plus, on top of that, I have a variety of challenges, and a lot of them center around ADHD. So now I'm trying to, in addition to all the career coaching, trying to have more of a focus with ADHD as well with career coaching and talks on ADHD and career choices. So that's how I've married everything together. It's very, very personal experience with ADHD plus all the professional experience.
Well, it's so important because there's a lot of transitioning going on.
Oh my gosh,
You know,
yes, absolutely.
So people are, don't always know where to go from here. Maybe they've been doing something for a long time and they've loved it. Now the company is out of business or has been taken over, or something's happening, or they didn't like what they were doing.
Absolutely.
Right? And today, there's so many choices.
Yes.
And I would like to start focusing on, figuring it out. Figure out with all the choices, what do people do? Where do they start?
Right. Where do they start?
Where do they start, Dan?
And certainly, whether you have ADHD or not, this applies certainly. Is that there's a number of ways you can kind of get started. One way, of course, is assessments. I'm a big fan of Myers-Briggs. I know that some people, will say, "Oh, Myers-Briggs is ancient. It's not good. It doesn't do any good anymore." I think the people that might say that haven't had a good experience with it, because when they took the assessment, they didn't answer all the questions in a mindset of who are they really? Who am I really? As opposed to, well, I better say this, or I better check this box. So especially if it's in a corporate scenario where they're trying to keep their job and they're taking the Myers-Briggs for some kind of a team building thing where they think they have to answer a certain way. So they get the results and go, eh. But if you take this assessment in a manner that how you really truly are, like if it asks something about planning, and frankly, you're more of a spontaneous kind of person, but you feel like you have to say I'm a planner because the earthlings, the rest of the earthlings expect you to be a planner in today's world. And if you are honest about it and go, you know what, no, I go with the flow. I'm more spontaneous. And you answer how you really, really, in a manner that states who you really, really are, I think you'll find it to be very accurate. It has me pegged. It has my daughter pegged. It has my wife pegged. I've had so many people tell me how accurate it is, but I've also had to lecture them on how to take it. So what I just told you is what I would tell anyone.
Okay, so let me interrupt you right there before you go. Okay,
Sure.
So taking this assessment, finding out whatever you find out, how does that benefit you in the job search or in cleaning out the attic so you can go forward?
Okay, two things. First off, it will show you some of the positions that you might really want to look into, because it's a person. Myers-Briggs is a personality assessment. It's not about skill sets. It's actually not about interests. It's about your personality, who you are. So it will help you to focus on certain careers, because there will be jobs that will come out with the results. It'll show you some of the things to think about looking into. So you see, that's one thing. But then in a job search, it will also help you in a job search in general, like when you're interviewing, because it'll talk about your strengths, areas of development. I don't like to call them weaknesses, areas of development. So that way, when you interview, you know that you got to work on this. This is going to come naturally. Like in my case, enthusiasm, it's going to be there. I don't have to work at it. Whereas there might be some other things I need to work at, so that when I have the interview, I don't, mess it up. Because that would be a real shame, is to figure out what you want to do, and you've networked with your friends and you get an interview and the dream job, and then you mess up the interview. It's happened. It's happened to me. It's happened to other people I know. So, but back to, how do you narrow it down and all that? Assessments might be one thing that you can do. A lot of times your very best friends, if you ask them, what are some of the strengths you see in me? What are some things that maybe you've always thought that I would be good at? But maybe you might ask them that because a lot of times, if you're working, they're not going to interfere with that. And they'll think you're happy in your job. So they're not going to say, have you thought about being a comedian? Because they seem happy in their job and the friends don't want to interfere and confuse them. But whereas if you go to your friends and say specifically, what do you think? You know me very well. What are some things that I could look into? You might be amazed at how many of your friends might have ideas that you might have already thought of, and they simply validate that, or they give you ideas that you hadn't thought of.
Okay, so here's another question. So, we want to talk in general terms, and we want to talk in specific terms as well.
Sure.
So before I go forward with my next question to Dan, if anybody wants to call in, I just want to remind you can call into the studio at 919-518-9773. He is an expert with this. So, if you've got some questions, concerns, you're curious about something, you can, connect with us. You can also do it on computers 2K voice, and you can also take part in our chat. So let's back up just a second.
Sure.
And ADHD or, ADD, anything in that area.
Okay.
You've been in the workforce or you are entering the workforce. What is some of the things you would tell somebody? Because, I'm not ADHD, but I can imagine just from what I know, from what I've read, it can be hard to put yourself into a box, into a container, to get to work into an office that has no windows. I mean, there are certain things, right, that
Right.
you would want to that would put that make somebody feel like, oh my God. So how would you coach somebody into the beginning, even before the assessment? I mean, what do you share with someone who's had that difficulty and maybe has hit a brick wall or is now on, and we're on during the day. People will watch us in the evening, but you're frustrated. You haven't been able to go forward. What would you tell someone?
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, just from an inspirational standpoint, I always try to get through to people that we live one time. And do you really want to spend your time in a job that you can't stand? Now, however, realistically, I know that when you're working all those hours, it's really hard to go out and look for another job. So that's definitely something that I always encourage people to go after what you really want to go after. But I also am fully aware that in reality, there are bills to pay, which makes people kind of really, that I think is it. That's what it is that keeps people in a job that they're not a good fit for. So a lot of times we just don't know what it is that we want to go into. And that's where I think, research when you're not working, because I'm not trying to encourage people to, while you're working, sitting there and looking all this up on the internet. But unlike when I got out of college 209 years ago, there's so much information there on the internet as far as, again, we have assessments, but we also have, what is someone like with me, for example, I have ADHD, what are some of the things I should be looking into? It might require that I go back to school. And again, this is all very big picture, because in the here and now, you're tempted to keep just doing the job and being unhappy, but at least the bills are getting paid. So it's easy to fall into that, and it's a rut. It's a serious rut. And by the way, as an aside, I know a lot of people that when they're first laid off, they're down about it. But then, in usually a matter of days, sometimes they realize it was really the best thing for them, because they really haven't enjoyed what they were doing. So this now gives them a chance, especially if they've been given a severance, if they have some time, getting paid to look for something else. So, with ADHD, for example, I mean, there's a lot of fields that are perfect. Nothing's perfect, but comes close to being perfect for you. And that would be a high energy type of a position where you're moving around a lot, because we're very enthusiastic. We're very creative. So if you have an opportunity to be in a role where you're creative, that may be what's frustrating you. You talked about the no windows. That's a great example. And there's other things too. If the job doesn't allow you creativity, doesn't give you any room for that, and your enthusiasm is scaring people, or you're being spontaneous and you're going with the flow, which a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, there are jobs out there that will allow you to do that. And one of them, which is really interesting for people with ADHD, a lot of things I read, because I'm not a firefighter myself, so I wouldn't initially think this, but then when I read about it and I understand what it takes to be a firefighter, it's actually a great thing to look into. Plus, you have a flexible schedule. But if you don't like fire, if you don't like heat, then maybe that's not the best thing for you. But there's a lot of exhilaration in that role. Lots of exhilaration. Salespeople, you're out and about, so it's variety. You're not in the office with the windows you mentioned, or the lack of windows. So salespeople can thrive. People that have ADHD can thrive in sales roles. I do speaking, so it's always a different audience. I've done catering. I do catering work very, very part-time here and there, and I'm on my feet the entire time when I'm doing that. So there's things you got to, if you understand a little bit more about yourself, and that's where an assessment might help too, but doing some research and then networking with people. And if you're on LinkedIn, there are groups on LinkedIn for practically everything you can imagine. And when you're in a group, you can message anybody at any time. You can send an email, whether you're actually connected to them as a friend or not, or a connection on LinkedIn. If you're in a group with people, you can reach out to anyone and send a message, and it doesn't cost you anything. And a lot of people don't realize that when on LinkedIn. So the internet makes it so easy, because there's so many things out there. In fact, if anything else, it's overwhelming sometimes. But the resources are out there.
Okay, Dan, hold on just a second.
Oh.
So just in recapping a second,
Yeah.
The idea is not to make yourself wrong. The idea is to say, these are my gifts. This is what I know I don't like. Mm-hmm. And then what Dan is suggesting is to take these assessments, a Myers-Briggs or something else, including asking your best friends, your mother, your father, your sister, whoever it is, your children, what do you notice that I do? What do you notice that's something that I can focus on in a job? Those are very important without making ourselves wrong. And creativity is key here, because ADHD, is creative, very creative, and you want to be able to speak to that. So before we go on to the next thing, Myers-Briggs and any other assessments, are they found on the internet?
Yes. I mean,
okay.
Someone like myself who's certified to deliver them. There's us, us humans. The Myers-Briggs humans are all over the place. But yes, on the internet as well, if you were to type Myers-Briggs, you could probably take there's probably a free test out there somewhere. In fact, I'm sure there is. The thing I want to warn you, though, about something that's free is it comes down to this: you get what you pay for, so to speak. Sometimes it'll ask you 4 questions and then say that this is your personality. You really need to, whether it's through me or someone else on the internet, there are versions of the assessments that are, Myers-Briggs, that are 93 questions and even above. You want to take one that's a little fuller than just 4 questions, because I don't think that's possible to be. You're going to literally just be pegged at that point with
Gotcha.
four questions. So yes, the assessments are online, and you will find some freebies. Just be careful, because if they don't ask enough questions, and depending on the frame of mind you're in when you take it or something, it might not be accurate. And then you're starting right off the bat, you're being told you should be an accountant because the assessment says so. When really, if you had taken one that's a little bit more in depth, you might find out that accounting is not the role for you.
Good, 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 very good. And then Chris is saying, she said, I would imagine any outdoor career would
Yeah,
be beneficial as
sure.
well.
Fresh air,
Mhm.
absolutely. Being, again, on your feet, definitely. There's a model that you learn when you're in career consulting, and that is that it's like two circles, and then there's a moment where they intersect. And one circle is your skills, what you physically, what you can do. You can actually go out and do this. Then there's the the want to do, the interest. So I could be a recruiter tomorrow with my background. I could probably be a recruiter. I would rather you handcuff me and put me into a police car and then take me to a train and blindfold me, take me on the train, make it go as fast as possible up a mountain and throw me off before I would be a recruiter. That's not knocking anybody who does recruiting. It's just for me and this part of my life and how I've grown and learned what I liked and what I didn't like in my roles. Recruiting would drive me bananas because I'd be sitting interviewing and I'd be on the internet all day long, and I would be researching and trying to find candidates, and then I'd be interviewing and sitting down again. And I need to be out and about and on my feet.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
These are the things in time, if you really pay attention, look at each job and go, what did I like and what did I not like? Eventually, and this is just because it's happened in my life, and it sometimes takes a long time, but you eventually can narrow your focus and realize what your strengths really are. And again, a strength would be something you can do and also want to do. Mm-hmm. Those two equal a strength.
A good job and a really good beginning. And I just want to reiterate again, for somebody who is out here a lot, we can create our own job. It doesn't necessarily have to be working for someone, and very often it can be. I mean, the opportunities out here can be endless. The jobs that exist, we may not even realize the combinations of things that people are putting together to create a job or create, a career. So you want to be really open and say, if you identify these areas as your area, then take it and go see what you can find, see what you can create with it. So Dan, we've talked about assessments, we've talked about, like Myers-Briggs, we've talked about, being okay with being creative. So what would you then suggest to someone? What's the next step?
Okay, well, you mentioned something a little bit ago, like in pretty much the last paragraph you were talking about, what are you going to create? I mean, it could be that it's a full-time job where you can use your skills, or it might be that you always wanted to do something that maybe you've always considered a hobby that you think, gosh, really, maybe there is a market for this. So that's one thing to do, and there's nothing wrong with doing both. Looking for work, maybe it's part-time work that allows you to have the income you need while you can continue to work on your own thing. That might be one thing to do. I mean, that's what I do. I have a variety of things that play into my ultimate goal of being to where I'm pretty much every day speaking in front of a group on ADHD and specifically career choices. I mean, this is a dream come true for me here to be on the show, being this specific with you. And I have been on the show before, and I'm so glad you asked me back. So this is great. But I have other things I'm doing as well to have some income, which is important. So it could be that you get some part-time jobs while you work on your own thing. It could be a full-time role that you could probably, if you can narrow down what it is that would be a good fit for you, you could start with, an example would be the Fortune magazine every year has the 100 best companies to work for in America. I mean, that could be a starting point for you to see if at these companies, targeting companies that have a reputation for treating their employees the right way, because that's what that list is about. That list is not about bottom line. The 100 best companies to work for in America, which is on fortune.com, is about how people are treated there.
Are there certain trends going on now that you are aware of, whether in looking for a job, in the transition, in any of these searches? Is there any trends?
Well, Okay, great question. As is all the other questions, or as is. Anyway, the question.
So you have to see how well he does at this, because I can drive a person nuts. Because I mean, ask my husband. I can shoot these questions out like nobody's business, and you can see what a good job Dan has done through his work. Because I could just knock him off his beam in a heartbeat. But
Yes, you could.
I can, and I am happily sorry.
And let me, if the listeners don't know, I'm going to tell them that none of this is rehearsed. I mean, when I call into this show and Marilyn interviews me like this or has me as a guest, I don't have any of the questions ahead of time. I mean, I don't. And of course, now that I've said all this, the next question you'll probably throw me for the biggest loop of my life. But anyway, the point is, for those of you that are wondering, yeah, I'm going with the flow, but it's because I have done this work for so long that I'm able to respond this quickly to what you've asked. But now I forgot your question.
Okay, wait, I got that question. So I asked you about trends, but I'm going to ask. Okay, but hold on a minute. I got another one I want to ask you first. We have to have a little fun here, right? So part of what he's showing you is how well, look, if you are ADD, ADHD, whatever it is, being asked questions, answering questions on your feet, it is a challenge for us all. It is always a challenge. When I'm asked questions and I have to think for a moment and then remember what the question was before or whatever, I'm sitting here and I am writing down some words and all that stuff. But what you're witnessing right now is all of this in action. And Dan is doing a great job, and I've complimented him before because he has become, such a great listener that his ADHD is, he's working with it. And what we're showing you which is something that neither one of us had discussed before. This just popped up, is how well you can do. Really, how well we all can do. If Dan can do this, if I can do this, if we can do this, we all can do this. So I just want to say that. So just watch this and see for yourself how well, and this is like, really important, because you are in situations that can be, frightening, that you don't want to go into. And sometimes we don't do the certain things that we need to do because we're fearful of situations like this, where somebody's going to ask you a question, you're not going to know the answer or whatever. But you see, he has a sense of humor, he's listening, he's observing, and all of that, right? So before we go into the trending, do you have something to add to what I just said?
You did a great job of saying what you just said. So really, I will say that I really think, though, that, in fact, I know this for a fact, that if you have things, I'm talking to all your listeners now, if there are things you want to do, I beg you, I literally beg you. I'm not on my knees, because I am standing up, by the way, which is another coping mechanism for me with this ADHD and talking, having this interview. If I sat down, I'd be, so I'm standing up. So I'm not going to get on my knees right now and beg you, but I do beg you that if there's something you want to pursue, that you go for it. Go for it, because life is it's too short. Some of my viewers totally get that. Some of my viewers maybe haven't had the big event that's made them realize life is too short. I have had more than one big event that has made me realize life is too short. I think part of it's just my personality in general, that I want to go out and pursue my dreams and make them happen. My visions, I want them to be complete and really do them and continue to grow and all that. But I really encourage you to not just listen to this program and go, that was really good, and then go back to something you really don't enjoy. Obviously, if you're on your lunch hour, you're going to need to go back to work. I understand that. But don't take this lightly. If there's something inside you that's really eating at you, that whether it's I really want to do something else, or just I can't stand where I am, whatever it is, it's really eating at you. However you get started with this emotionally, get started with this and talk to a career coach, whether it's me or someone else, but kind of get going on this, because life, I just really believe life's too short. It just is.
It just is.
You were talking about trends.
Yeah.
I was thinking about one thing I know that's changed a lot since I was a recruiter 403 years ago is that when you came into an interview that long ago, and if I were to say, so what do you know about our company? You would have had to have, Marilyn, yourself and everyone else would have had to have broken into the library the night before because the library closed early and you got the call late from the recruiter. Now you're running from the log because you broke into the library to get the information. But anyway, and then the one page you need is the one page that's been ripped out of the book. We don't have an excuse anymore. There's obviously the internet gives us plenty of information on companies, but the trend is, because I think a lot of people know the importance of recruiting or researching before a job interview. But go on to LinkedIn and check out if you know the interviewers' names. And usually, if a company has it together, they're going to let you know in an email or on the phone beforehand. They're going to let you know the names of the people that you're going to be interviewing with. Go online and look at their profiles. They've looked at yours. More than likely, they've looked at yours if you're on LinkedIn. Okay, now I know if you're not on LinkedIn yet, you might be like, well, that doesn't impact me. Yes, it does, because if you're not on LinkedIn, get onto LinkedIn. And I really believe LinkedIn is I know if I were the president of the country, and by the way, we're not going to get into politics. All I'm saying is that I would have it be a law that you have to be on LinkedIn. I mean, I just really believe LinkedIn will help you when you are interviewing, pre-interviewing, research, and also in the interview. Because Marilyn, if I find out where, let's just say you went to Western Illinois University, which is where I went to school, I found that in your profile, I'm going to bring it up somewhere along the way. By the way, I see you're a fellow Leatherneck. And, whatever it takes to get a conversation going and show that we did, that I did some research on you and not just the company, but on you as the interviewer. So that's something that's been, people have been advising that for a while, but it's definitely a trend, something that I think they almost would expect you to do, when you're interviewing. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind as far as job search and trending.
Well, it would be really awful for them to turn around and say, well, I see that, after I looked at your resume that you were a da 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 da, and you don't know that they were too.
Right.
That makes a great sense.
Yeah. I mean, so that's definitely a trend that's come with LinkedIn is,
Good.
yeah.
Good. What other ones? Now, because people are all at all places in their career. So
Right.
Is that more for a, somebody who's been more into a professional career, or is that for anybody?
I think when you're in college, you start going, and again, I don't know all the demographics. I don't know how many people are listening in the age groups that are right now listening to this, but because again, if you're a professional, more than likely you've at least heard of it and at least set up a profile. You might not have learned how to use it all that much yet, but you've at least set up a profile. But if you're out there and you're in college, I'd get on LinkedIn as soon as you can, because recruiters are going to look at that. If you like to tweet, maybe you're on Twitter. The thing of posting very positive, inspirational types of things that are going on in your life. I think that a lot of people think, well, Twitter, I don't need to worry about that as long as I'm on LinkedIn. Well, but Twitter also gets your name out there and kind of creates your brand and who you are and your as far as professionally, the things you're trying to get across. And so I know, for example, I have an ADHD Twitter page where my angle, I'll use that loosely, but I'm saying my emphasis is very, very positive things about ADHD. That's what I tweet 4, 5, 6 times a day. I try to put things up that are positive about ADHD because there are lots of positives. Now, I could get on a tangent in my head here about perspective, because perspective is really important when you're in a job search, because sometimes in a career search in general, so I'm trying to figure out what to do, and then you've got the job search. Perspective is really important because there might be times you think you've nailed it and you don't get the job. So you automatically think, well, I guess I'm not supposed to do that. No, that one company just didn't get it, didn't put it together. And maybe you actually put it together when you were interviewing that this isn't the right fit for you. But going back to my little inspirational piece about going after what you want, you're going to have your ups and downs with this. But the positive perspective is, with everything that doesn't go well, there's a lesson there. And then you continue to think, okay, I'm not going to do that the next time I interview. And eventually, let's say you figured out some of the things you want to do and you're having networking meetings and you're having interviews now, because you've laid out your resume and your LinkedIn profile in a manner that shows the things you want to do now, the changes, and you have an interview and it doesn't go well, because to be realistic, this is not being negative, to be realistic, there will be interviews that just won't go well. It's the perspective of, okay, I'm going to learn from that, because that has been my life story, has been learning one thing after another, almost to the point where I'm like, okay, I've learned enough, but I haven't, because every day there's another lesson that I learn, and I don't just have I don't just have the experience. I try to learn again from that lesson, and that is, it can be maddening sometimes when you want things to happen quickly. Things don't happen quickly. Sometimes they do, but a lot of times they don't. Mm-hmm. So what happens? We get discouraged and we say, forget it. I'll just go back and get the kind of job I had before, because I know I can do that. This isn't worth it. This isn't worth all these changes I want to make. It's just not worth it. So now you're back, and now you're miserable again. So I encourage you to continue to look at every experience as a lesson, because I've got a lot of them.
Good. So
can I just give you one? I have a whole I have a whiteboard that's behind the computer, because we're Skyping. Yeah. And there's a big whiteboard here of all these things, and when we're done, I'm going to go, oh, why didn't I talk about that? And oh, I wish I had. Oh, why didn't I? So can I just do?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Here I was, perfect job for me. At least I thought it was going to be the perfect job. And this was back in Orlando quite a while ago, before we moved up here. We've lived in Raleigh now for 17 years. And it poured that day. And the problem was, the day before it had rained, and I came home with my one umbrella. Now this, again, was a job that I thought was going to be perfect for me. Okay. And I'll bet you have listeners who can relate to this kind of thing. They probably know where this is headed. So I walk in on the rainy day, and I put the umbrella down. Well, the next morning, I didn't look at the weather forecast. I'm a human being. I forgot. I didn't do it. I made a mistake. And I walked right past that umbrella, because I didn't think I needed it. And I got to the interview. This was in the days before cell phones. I mean, the only ones you could use are the ones that were like the military phones that were like this big. The antenna was bigger than the car. Literally the antenna was bigger than the car. There's no way I could have got this. I couldn't have a cell phone back then, 20 years ago, 18 years ago, 17 years ago, whenever. I just didn't have one. I didn't. Anyway, and so I couldn't call in to tell them I was drowning outside in the parking lot, because I was on time for this interview. I had actually made it about 15 minutes early, but then it started to pour. I didn't have one umbrella in the car. So now I'm running through the raindrops. I get in there. I'm freezing. I'm asking them to put the heat on. I'm coughing and sneezing. Well, I never heard from them again. So that was one of those interviews that ended with the interviewer telling me, saying to me, "Good luck to you." I mean, that was one of the, when they say good luck to you, it's usually over. So, because it doesn't make sense otherwise. Why would they say good luck to you? So that's an example of, again, one of the things I learned. So now I have like 17 umbrellas in the car. And again, I could easily have been like, well, yeah, they didn't hire me. And, no, there's a reason. And the reason is I was late. I was a little late because I tried to wait it out. Couldn't call them to tell them I was out there. Soaked. And then I let it impact me the whole time, too, when I was sitting in there. Are you prepared, Dan? Are you normally prepared? And I'm like, well, yeah, with the exception of right now, because I'm freezing. I couldn't let it go, and it was a mess. Right. It was a mess.
And that happens, and the fact is, we're learning from each other. So I want to ask you something else then. So are there certain things that we talked about trends, and of course, being on time is important and relevant. Whatever, but let's talk about certain things that could be acceptable or used to be acceptable that are no longer acceptable. I mean, what would you say about that? Are there certain things that just blare out at you that are like, this is what you should do? Okay, we talked about LinkedIn, but what other little tips can you share?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you mean in an interview?
Preparing for the interview, getting ready for the interview, doing the interview.
Right. Okay. Well, because of LinkedIn and because of that, a lot of people, and the fact that you've sent your resume in and they also liked your resume, it is easy to think, well, they've already got my resume. They've printed it off. They've printed off my LinkedIn. They don't care about bond paper anymore. I don't need to bring extra resumes, or, even if I do, I just put it on regular cheap paper. I'm not about to go out and buy bond paper. That's something that's ancient. Buy bond paper. Buy bond paper and put your resume on the bond paper, because it's just that extra little step. But it would be easy to think, well, I don't need to because I'm sure they've got everything. Heck, I emailed them my resume. Certainly they're going to just print them out. That would be something that I think could hurt you, is to not think that you need extra resumes because of the trend of now we just email everything.
So okay, so hold on. So some of the things that we used to do
right
are still
important,
yes. Right?
Absolutely. Because we're still talking psychology. We're still talking, humans, even though things have happened and we go about things maybe a different way. We're still humans, and there's the psychology of, for example, body language. I don't think it's ever going to change to where, you can get through a whole interview and not look at the person and get away with it. You see, that's always been important, and it will always continue to be important.
So for someone who, like you, let's say, who has a hard time sitting behind the desk,
right,
or sitting for any length of time, what are certain strategies that you would suggest to someone who ADD again, ADHD, or simply just creative and has a hard time sitting still? What would you say?
So you're in the role, you're in a job, and you're in a job that, again, you're miserable maybe, but you have to continue to keep it while you're looking for something else. And you're in a role where you're sitting down a lot. So am I following?
No, when you're in an interview, I'm sorry.
When you're in an interview.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, though, if you're in a job where you need to be sitting more than you would like to, maybe you set a timer, maybe hour on the hour. You can look forward to that little on your phone, that little ding going off, which would give you permission maybe to stand up a little bit and walk around. I mean, it's amazing when you set timers. It's just amazing how that really does kind of keep you where you need to be. And then the timer goes off and you're like, ooh, I earned it, so I can now do something. Right. Or now I can check email because I didn't want to check email constantly, so I'll set the timer on your phone. So just something to think about. But if you're interviewing and you're the applicant, and it's hard for you at that point to, I think, to stand up and walk around in the interview. That would be a little challenging, but you certainly are allowed to not constantly be moving, but maybe mirroring the language of the other person. Like if they cross their legs, you maybe cross your legs and just kind of mirror. So you're not sitting like the whole time like this. I mean, you're certainly allowed to move around a little bit so that you're able to do that much. I think that it's hard to ask them to stand up. I think that would be trickier. I think once you get the job, there's all those little things where you can then impart a lot of, some of the things that you would learn from me or from whoever else that you realize is important to you as far as being able to move a lot. But I think in an interview, it's kind of tricky to really to do that, to move around too much.
Yeah.
But you can certainly shift in your chair a little bit, but even then it can't be constantly. Right. So it's a little trickier.
It is trickier, and I think also another thing is to pay attention to your breathing. I think paying attention to your breathing in an interview when you want to jump out of your skin and don't want to be there is really relevant because it keeps you grounded. So
no pun intended, because you got to stay.
No pun intended.
Get it? Got to stay.
Exactly.
That was very good.
Oh, thank you. I could be funny.
You are hilarious.
So you mentioned, paper and doing the same old thing that we used to do before that we should still continue to do, and then doing the research on LinkedIn. What were you going to say? Because I also want to talk about follow-up. Go ahead.
I was going to say that when you are given the chance to ask questions, there's two mistakes people make there. The applicants. The one mistake is, no, I don't have any questions. This has been fun. The second one that's a mistake is, what are the salary requirements and when do I get my first paycheck? And that is asked. People do ask that question. They do it. When you're given a chance to ask questions, ask the person a couple other things if you want to, but if you only have room for this one, just one, ask them what they like about working there. What do you like about working here? And let the person ramble. It shows you can listen because you're making it about them. Just like when you mention something on their LinkedIn profile and you make it about them, it's key, it's huge. Make it about them. But when you ask them what they like about working there, two things happen. They'll love you because you're listening to them, maintain the eye contact as much as humanly possible, but you're also learning a lot about the place. So that person you're interviewing with might love all the travel they do. Although the ad only said it was going to be 17% travel, you're now finding out that it's really going to be more like 61% travel. And they're not being negative, they're talking very positively about it, but you're listening and you're realizing this might not be the right role for me. It is okay to turn down a job offer. Now, right there, I'm going to get a lot of flack for that comment. But in the big picture, it is worth it to turn down a job that you know just is not going to be the right fit. So always ask. Always ask what they like about working there. That's a key question.
And I think, Dan just touched upon something that would probably freak out a lot of people, and I'm sure it has, about turning down a job thinking that it's your last one ever.
Ever.
And
ever.
And you're saying, no, it's not your last one ever.
Yeah, frankly, you know what? It might be if you never do anything else about trying to find another job, because the job's not just going to come to you. But if you continue to do the things you're doing that you did to get to that interview, you're going to get other interviews. And this is my experience of 20 years with people I've worked with of all varying types of ages and demographics. People always do get another interview. I mean, always. They get another interview. So it's kind of like when you're back in high school. Well, no, this might hit too many people too hard, but you're in high school and you fall in love, and then you're not so happy with the whole thing, but you won't break up because you feel like if you break up, you'll never meet anyone else for the rest of your life, right? We've done this. There are listeners who probably have done this, and I hate to bring it up because now I've just hit a wound. But really, that's how it is. It's very similar. It's an analogy. I mean, we do this with job interviews. We think if I don't take it, I'm never going to get another job offer, and that's not true. If you keep doing the things you've been doing to get that one, you're going to have other opportunities.
Now, what about asking for the job? Is that come into play? I mean, just simply asking for a job, asking for the job.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to respect the fact that there are other candidates and that they have a process, going on. But you can certainly indicate your very strong interest in this, both verbally as you stand up and you're shaking hands goodbye, to them. And hopefully it's not goodbye forever, but you can just tell them, I'm very interested in this position. I think that's important to let them know that if you are. Also, a thank you note. It can be an email because that's what we do now. We email people pretty much everything. But if your handwriting is legible, mine's not. But if your handwriting is legible and if it comes down to you and one other person and you send in a note that talks about how much you appreciated their time and how much you want this job, you feel like it's a great fit, and it's an actual card, a piece of mail that they get oh my gosh, it's going to blow them away. It's going to blow them away. And that is not out. People might say, that's out. No, it's not. I feel like that's always in. To send a handwritten thank you note would blow them away. And if it's between you and one other person and they really don't know what to do, you could be the one that gets it because of that move.
So what other advice would you give? We talked about, some of the process. What other advice would you give someone with ADHD in finding a job?
Okay. Let's just say again, now we're talking to someone who has it, or maybe again, someone who does, and you can then maybe have them watch this show because you post these, right?
Oh, yeah.
You have so many gifts, and the news will make you think you don't. Now, and I'm not minimizing the challenges, because I could talk about strictly the challenges on them for hours, but that's not my focus. I also like to focus on the positives. You have so much to bring an employer. If you were to go in and Google, for example, top positions for ADHD or ADHD career choices, there is no shortage. And a lot of it's very consistent, some of the fields that people with ADHD have been successful in. Don't let the ADHD make you feel like you're inferior. It's easy to feel that way because you're seeing other people around you and they're able to organize easier and they're able to to do detail. But you know what? Think about it. They're probably not as expert as you are in as far as being enthusiastic. I bet they lack creativity, which is something you have, because I know I do. I have creativity and enthusiasm. So recognize the positives. And going back to Google, if you Google top positive characteristics or characteristics of ADHD that are positive, or however you want to word it, you will start to feel better about yourself, because you will find out that there's a lot of things we bring to the planet. Did you know that Dustin Hoffman has ADHD? Will Smith has ADHD. Ty Pennington. Jim Carrey, which might be the most obvious because of the hyperactivity part. You know, Jim Carrey clearly has that. Thomas Edison, it's believed strongly that he had it. Michael Jordan has it. Walt Disney, look at his vision, creativity in his vision. It's believed strongly he had it. All the characteristics were there. You are in a wonderful class, and I'm also in this wonderful class of people that do bring an enormous amount of things to the world. And it's easy, though, to want to focus on the challenges, because there are many of them. There are. But try to focus on those positives. Give yourself some credit. Realize everybody has challenges. Everybody does. And everybody has strengths, just like you do. So,
are you finding anything unusual in this area when it comes to women versus men, millennials versus whatever? Not versus, but in addition to. Is there anything in there?
Yes. Oh my gosh. First off, women are not diagnosed as much as the men are, and I think it's because with women, I have a daughter, for example, who, I'm not saying she has ADHD, but she does have a lot of my type of personality and all that. I know she's struggled with it a little bit more, whereas it's always, as far as maybe even admitting she has it or whatever, whereas, I think with boys, it's known, boys jump on the desks and boys do this and boys and boys and boys, and you hear about all these entrepreneurial men who make it, with ADHD. You don't hear about it as much with the girls, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You don't hear it as much, but they have it as well. I mean, there are plenty of girls and women who have been very successful who have ADHD. So it's not just, the men, but you hear about it more with boys jumping all over the desks in class and all that stuff. Yeah. So not sure if that answered your question or not.
And then what about millennials? Anything about that?
My daughter has grown up, for example, she's grown up in an age where cell phones were right from the very beginning, and usernames and passwords and apps and, oh my gosh, tweeting and this and that and the other, whereas I had to learn how to go into that slowly, all that. I mean, I literally had to, segue from being pre-cell phone to being with cell phone and all that. I think that it's easy to feel like you're distracted and inattentive enough to where you have ADHD because of what society has done to us.
Yeah, really.
There's a real ADHD, which is what I've had, and I've had it as long as I can remember. I mean, you don't just all of a sudden when you're 35, you're like, I think I'm a little distracted. I think I have ADHD. And what's frightening is there are doctors that then give the people medicine when they're really just distracted because there are birds flying all over the place and there's 14 usernames and passwords they've lost track of. That's not ADHD. ADHD is impulsivity and hyperactivity and inattentiveness. I mean, it's more than just being distracted by a bird. So I think the trend is to have ADHD. And someone who's had it their whole life, it's actually a little disheartening because I don't feel like a lot of people really have it that are getting medication for it. Although I think it's good, though, that some people have been woken up to the fact that maybe they do have it and they actually really do have it. So that's the good news. That's the good news about it. But yeah, I think it's more trendy to have ADHD.
Gotcha. All right. Well, this has been great. If anybody has anything you want to add, we'll love to have you call in. You can call into 919-518-9773, or you can connect with us on Skype at computers, the number 2K voice. You can still partake in our chat. Just put your name in there next to the video, and you can ask us questions in there as well. Certainly, for all of you that are out there that are uh, discovering new ways of doing things, and sometimes we wake up and we say, okay, where am I and what do I do next? Call us, because I think Dan might be able to shed some light on the next, because it is, there's all kinds of competition and there's all kinds of interesting things out here. And it's like, what do I do now? Do I write a thank you note or do I email the thank you note, right?
Which
Do I,
either way is better than not doing one.
yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
let's really get a handle. So Dan, tell everyone, exactly where they can find you and what they
Okay.
will find when they do.
Okay. My website's dangalloway.com. So that should be easy that way. I also have two Twitter accounts. I have a Twitter, and you've got the .com and you got the / and then you've got Dan Galloway. But I also tweet, and that's more general inspiration. Frankly, the one that I've been working more on, and I kind of think it shows too. I have more followers, and I tweet just a little bit more on that one. Is the ADHD one, which is ADHD's big picture. So you've got plural ADHD. So ADHD's big picture, because I'm trying to say it's the big picture of ADHD. So that handle is ADHD's big picture. But Dan Galloway is my website. And if you go there, you can contact me. There's email, of course, and phones. And you'll see that I do a variety of things and, career coaching. And I even do some team building that uses Myers-Briggs. But and also ADHD. So I'm trying to get out there and inspire as many people as possible, help as many people as possible. Life is too short not to be doing what you really want to do. I love what I do and want to do, and I'm always wanting to do more of it. So please get in touch with me. And by the way, as far as one more thing I'll say on speaking engagements is any age. I mean, not 3-year-olds maybe, but I'm saying, certainly high school, college, and adults. I mean, I'm a speaker, and it's not just relegated to one tiny little area. I mean, I love what I do and want to reach people of all ages. So
Gotcha. And bear in mind when you're listening to this, I mean, this was not like you didn't open up a book one day and go, oh, I'm going to do this, and it's going to be just like I'm going to check this off, I'm going to check this off, I'm going to check this off from a list. It doesn't work that way. I don't have ADHD, and I've carved out my career, the way I want it, the way I would like it to be, my vision. So then you listen and you listen for help along the way. As Dan said earlier, you ask people, what are your thoughts here? Any suggestions here? Who do you know that I can talk to? Start reading any kind of employment site, that post jobs, that talk about, employment opportunities. Just start really like honing in, because the playing field for everybody is really interesting. And what you can accomplish on your own is huge. And then, of course, you have somebody like Dan who you can come to you know, for more assistance, deeper assistance, further assistance, help in
absolutely.
general. So I would highly recommend that you do that. And I would also suggest, please make friends with me. Follow me on LinkedIn at Marilyn Listens, and then as well on Facebook. You can find me at Marilyn Lipman, Shannon. I have the Breaking Free show. You can follow the Nissan Communications page. Please do that, because you'll be kept up with all the things that we do here at the channel as well as on our show, and on LinkedIn as well. If you have any ideas and you want to reach out to me,
yeah, and I'm on LinkedIn as well.
and I
So
was going to
yeah.
say, ask questions on Twitter, ask questions on LinkedIn. You can start a really good conversation, and that's what we're all here to help create. So, Dan, anything in closing?
There will be naysayers who will say, "Oh, come on, just don't go after your dreams. Just keep your job." You're going to have some of that. In fact, frankly, you're going to have a lot of that. You have to get ready for that and use that as a driving force. Actually, you have to get to where you use it as a driving force as opposed to going, "Okay, all right," because everybody else wants you to do something else. Because you're
Right.
going to have that. You're going to have naysayers.
And
And
that's only because they can't see it,
yeah,
or they are scared to see it, but if you see it, that's all you care about,
Yes.
right?
You try to remember this. You live once, go for it. Because if you just try to please the other people, really, does that really matter in the long run? You've got to, I mean, it's good to listen to the other side, but you can't let the naysayers totally throw you so much for the
Exactly.
loop that you don't pursue your dreams.
Absolutely. So I want to thank you, Dan, so much as usual. Always, you're such a great guest.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Perfect. And I want to thank all of you out there for being here today and sharing this time with us. And I look forward to having you here next week. And have a wonderful, wonderful week. If you're on break or you're on this or you're on that, enjoy it. Take some time to go look for a new job, look for opportunities, just see where the pulse is for you and have fun and connect with us. So, Dan, thank you once again.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And everybody out there, we'll see you next week. Bye.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisrael Cutler, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Parent Dome with Ryan Miller, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.